joining us live from the arena. Make sure you go to allphly.com to make sure you read the recap, even after you hear his great words on here with us tonight. And Kyle, first, of course, we had the injury scare in the first half. At the end of the second quarter, going into the halftimes with the Sixers and the Magic, he comes back out on the floor, finishes the game, 32 points, double-double, 13 boards, 7 assists. What did you get from Nick Nurse, and if you had also had the opportunity from Joel Embiid on that and how things played out in the moment?
Well, so first of all, I have to tell you the reason we were so quick is because big upset, Joel Embiid got out of there before we even got into the locker room. So he was moving very quickly after the game. I can only assume that means that his son Arthur was here, because that's normally the impetus for him moving faster than normal. In terms of the injury scare, we were told it was the knee that had been repaired, and they looked at it. Doctors didn't see much swelling, said felt comfortable with him going back out there. So he went back out there. They did have some plans in place for if he had not been able to go or if it had went the other way. I believe they toyed with Mo Bamba starting the second half, depending on who had been out there for Orlando. I believe he said specifically if Mo Wagner had started, because they liked that matchup a bit better. Other than that, what we heard was it's same as the everyday process at this point. We're all going to wake up tomorrow. We'll see how Joe's feeling. We'll see how his body responds, and everybody will take it from there. I do think it was a good sign, not only that he came back, but that they played him down the stretch as well. They were still in the lead, obviously a little bit dicey before he came into the game, but I thought that was probably a positive sign that they got him those conditioning reps to end the game in spite of that scare.
I guess for me, a little less on reporter Kyle, a little more on analyst Kyle. Give people watching a little preview of your column. This was a measuring stick game against a really good defense and a strong playoff caliber team. What did you take away from tonight?
So to stay on Joel a little bit, I think his passing has been awesome lately, and I think that's been a clear emphasis there. Nick sat up here at the podium tonight, talked about how when they do have chances to practice, that they work on that, the spacing, the cutting, the movement, everything around Joel and that ecosystem. And frankly, a lot of it also just falls on him as an individual, making reads, making the passes. So that was awesome to see. Whenever he fills up the box score, double-digit rebounds, flirted with a triple-double, that to me is as important as the 30-plus point games, which he's scoring those in his sleep, even with when the shooting touch eludes him at times. So that was great. The other big thing to me is a theme that we saw emerge, I think early in the season, maybe less so as they were lost in the wilderness without Joel. But that's Tyrese as a closer and a guy who can take a game from being, within reach and saying, like, raise his hand and say, I got this. And I did ask him in the locker room tonight, are you at the point in your career where you just feel comfortable and confident looking Joel in the eye and saying, like, no, like, I got this. Like, I'm on a roll. I can do this. And Tyrese said, like, this last 2-month period without Joel, he thinks was useful to him in that way, like having to be the guy and you're always relied on and getting all those reps as the lead guy. And I know he will be the lead perimeter player and was prior to Joel going down and having to control the team. But it does seem like he gained some valuable reps, some confidence, and I think all that's going to translate. And one last thing, since Derek asked for analyst Kyle, I will say one thing that has impressed me over the last week and a half, whatever it's been, is that these have all been either must-win games or something close to that, right, in terms of the standings battle. And generally, they have shown up with the absolute right mentality, playing hard from the opening tip, have played pretty good defense, connected defense at the very least, had some lapses tonight in transition, like, although you give Orlando credit for that. But these are not gimme games, right? Like, we can say they're probably better than Orlando on balance. They're better than a team like Miami. You should beat teams like Memphis, San Antonio, even without Joel in San Antonio on the back-to-back. But you still have to go out there and win those games. And so They found ways to win. Miami, it was a back and forth shootout. This one, they were basically wire to wire winners. They're winning in different ways. The offense looks great with Joel Embiid. Maxi's ascending. Kelly Oubre continues to play really inspired basketball. So they just have the look of a team that is on a mission right now. And despite the fact that the standings battle is going to come down to just a bunch of insane tiebreakers, it looks like they're focused on the right stuff, which is we have to be playing our best ball going into the playoffs.
And when you talk about, of course, from Embiid to Maxey and even Oubre, just looking at the team as a whole, you mentioned that they had leads as high as 15 in the first half. They even got it to 17. And Orlando punched back and came back and made it very interesting, so much so where Tyrese Maxey had to score 5, Tobias Harris extra 2 on the 7-0 run to make it after Orlando cut it to a 7-point lead. And that's where I wanted to go, because they continue to find ways. And even when Orlando extends their defensive pressure, Jalen Suggs is all up in, he and Gary Harris, Markelle Fultz as well, all up in Tyrese Maxey and Kyle Lowry in the backcourt. And then you come down where Jalen Suggs is barking at Joel Embiid where they're going at it, and he's inspiring Suggs to play even more. You're just seeing so many different things from this team to help wins, including protecting the basketball, talking on defense. And Kyle, I even brought it up while I was still there with you, where Joel is yelling at Tobias Harris, stop reaching. Something that could be a teaching thing going forward, because he knows that he has his back. And they just, as you said, continue to do things to surprise us. And that includes Maxey playing the way that he is in that co-starring or /starring role.
Yeah, they just look, I do think there was an element of this last year. I felt last year, in spite of how the season ended, throughout the season, that they were a fairly resilient team. Like a lot of games that the Embiid-less lineups that were led by James Harden, they would battle back. And, they had that one really inspiring fourth quarter comeback late in the season in Milwaukee where they beat the Bucks. And I think that was the first time last year where people really sat up and were like, oh, this team could potentially do some damage. And so it's been good to see, despite Harden leaving, you lose a Hall of Fame player, you turn him into the role players and make some subsequent trades as a result of that. But to see with Tyrese leading the show, that same type of resilience with him and Joel, the partnership that they've built, to see Kelly Oubre pretty consistently stepping up in big moments lately. Another thing we havenent talked about, I don't know if you guys have talked about it on the show, this is another game where Paolo Banchero did mostly nothing for most of that game. And a lot of that falls on Tobias Harris slowing him down and figuring out ways to bother him. I did write in the recap that Paolo kind of owned him down the stretch for like a 2 to 3 minute period. But outside of that, that was a really impressive defensive outing against him, because he's a guy who can punish different matchups. So, look, as all of us have said in so many words, I like that they've been able to win games in different ways against different styles of teams. We're still going to see what it looks like against elite offensive players, which I don't think they've seen many of those lately. And they were lucky to dodge a couple of those when OKC had Shea and Jalen missing in that game. But you can only play who's on the schedule, and the business-like approach and, frankly, just the wins have been great to see.
Do you think the starting lineup they went with today will be what they use in the playoffs?
If I had to guess, yes. I still think you need to get Batum on the floor with Joel more and more and more. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in some closing situations. I think one of the themes of post-game, but also recently, though, is that when Kelly Oubre plays like this, he's going to force his way onto the floor, right? Like he's doing quite a bit for this team. Like we keep saying it. And Nick Nurse actually spotlighted one of my favorite plays of the game from him, that drop off to Paul Reed, whereas in the first half, he drives, defense collapses on him, and he hits the easy one to Paul on the baseline in the dunker spot for an easy basket. And that's the next level for Kelly that he's been showing for, I don't know, like a month and a half now, that he's driving consistently, scoring as a slasher. The 3-point shooting comes and goes. He had a couple big ones tonight. I think the important thing is teams respect him as a shooter and will still close out hard on him even when he's missing shots. But the reads he's making, the off-ball defense, that's what's keeping him on the floor, I think, even when he's in a cold stretch. So as much as I'm advocating for Batum, I don't think he's getting crunch time or starting lineup minutes over Kelly until Kelly stops playing like this. And as we've established on the show, I don't think he's going to play. I don't think Tobias is going to be usurped unless something absolutely crazy happens in the next few weeks, which who knows, but not expecting it.
Yeah. Also, I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything before I left. Maybe I'm a little off base here, but 5 minutes and 21 seconds for DeAnthony Melton. Did they speak about that a little bit more in the post game?
Especially after they just said he was going to try to play him more minutes than he previously did.
Yeah.
It did come up in the post game, and I think Nurse made it sound like it was just a minutes crunch situation, that it wasn't a health thing. So I was very surprised that we didn't see more of him after, what did he play, 15 in the previous game? And as Derek said, we were at practice yesterday, and Nick very deliberately was like, yeah, we're hoping to get him maybe 20 or more minutes so we can ramp him up, etc. So yeah, I was surprised by that, but didn't indicate any kind of physical issue, and DeAnthony seemed fine when we saw him in the locker room as well.
All right.
By the way, one last health thing. Tyrese, I know he took that tough spill.
Yeah.
Jalen Suggs not going to be welcome back in Philadelphia for a while, I don't think. He didn't endear himself to the locals, but Tyrese said he was fine. Got a jolt of pain in his elbow, he said, but doesn't seem like anything to worry about as of yet. Obviously, stay tuned, but I think, knock on wood, we're in the clear.
Finally, we haven't gotten to the Iverson piece yet. They're going to celebrate him a lot on Sunday in the regular season finale. Derek, of course, there for the unveiling of the sculpture along Legends Walk. Wanted to ask you about, of course, just Iverson in general, because we always talk about him. We know what he means to the city and the organization and the franchise. And that's going to be a big conversation piece, of course, on Sunday against Brooklyn.
Yeah, so I mean, transparently, we all obviously take the fan hats on to do our job, or fan hats off to do our jobs, right? And we take it very seriously, blah, blah, blah. But I grew up watching Iverson. He's the first athlete that felt like it was like he represents where I'm from and these teams that I grew up watching. One of the first athletes honestly, the first athlete I connected with my dad with, right? Because like when you inherit sports fandom from family members, relatives, whoever it might be, they have their guy that they grew up with. This is how it should be done, and this is what greatness looks like, blah blah blah. And Allen Iverson obviously shook up the league in a lot of ways, not just as a player, but trends and styles and sneakers and the intersection with music and all kind of other stuff. Like the Jadakiss commercials were incredible. But the reason his story and his game resonated so much with so many people from different walks of life, different generations, all that is we all saw it when he was between those lines. That guy left absolutely everything he had on the floor. He was very clearly himself at all times, sometimes and often to his detriment. Like he says it all the time. Like I took a beating during my career so that some of these modern stars, these guys now, can have it a little bit easier, hopefully. And he wears that as a badge of honor. And so I think he's got this enduring legacy, not just in Philadelphia, but everywhere. The thing that honestly makes me happiest, though, listening to him, following him as he progressed past his playing career, and his playing career ended pretty abruptly for a guy who was as great as he was at his peak. He very easily could have been one of those, like, fuck these young kids today and how these guys play. He is like the ultimate ambassador for basketball. He is constantly on TV, on podcasts, on Instagram, wherever it might be, praising these guys. Like Steph Curry is absolutely incredible. LeBron is the greatest. Joel Embiid is the greatest. Tyrese Maxey. I actually think the other day when Tyrese dropped 52 on San Antonio, he specifically made a post about Tyrese Maxey on his Instagram. And so that to me is what sports and the basketball community specifically is about, right? It's like passing the game to new generations, to other people, whether you know them or not, and rekindling that love for other people. So it's been so awesome for me as someone who grew up that he's like someone I looked up to and loved watching play, to see him continue to pass that on to people who never saw him play through other people's achievements. So A plus guy, A plus player. That's about all I got on him.
My favorite part about this Curry thing when you bring up Steph Curry is when he always calls him, or in the beginning he would say, man, that little light-skinned dude in Golden State. That's how it always is. Make sure you go read Kyle at allphly.com. Of course, he'll be back again for post-game live from the arena on Sunday as the Sixers wrap things up against Brooklyn in the regular season.
We all silly like the mayor.